He is the editor-in-chief here at Crooked and host of the show Rubicon. Please welcome Brian Beutler. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So episode 2, season 2 of Rubicon is out right now. I really urge everybody to check it out. It's a show about the conversations Democrats are having about the best way to use the power we have won, that we fought so hard to win. And so I want to just start. I want to talk about Biden. I want to talk about Congress. Let's start with Biden. We are recording this after 2 weeks of a fast-moving series of executive orders meant to undo some of the worst damage of the Trump administration. Biden came out with a $1.9 trillion rescue package that included raising the minimum wage, $1,400 to get the checks up to $2,000, unemployment benefits, $350 billion for state and local aid, something Democrats have said we needed for a long time. How do you feel about how Joe Biden and the Biden administration has come out of the gate?
I think that where Biden can act alone, everything's going very well. I mean, and it's not really a surprise, I don't think, because his team is filled with people who have very recent experience running the government, and it's what they've devoted their lives to. So we're lucky in a sense, for many reasons, I guess, that Trump didn't get an extra 4 years, but Democrats, including many of the people in the Biden administration, were only out of government for 4 years. And you can, I think you can kind of see that the muscle memory is still there. They didn't lose any time because they knew what they were doing. And then they also had the added benefit that Trump was a fairly lazy president and did a lot of things unilaterally, which made them fairly easy to undo.
So on the relief front, there has been this debate going this week. Basically, the debate is, what is the most likely and quickest way to get as much relief and help to as much people and places in need? What is the best way to do that? There are basically, I think, three paths. One is budget reconciliation, which would be a budget bill that only requires 51 votes, but is a process that has some complications. There is regular order, where you would require 60 votes, and you would have to get 10 Republicans to go along. And then there's the combo approach, which has been floated a lot today as we're recording this, which basically says, okay, you want to get $1.9 trillion of relief out into the world. Senate Republicans, you can maybe get 10 who would go along with at most half of that, probably less. But you could do that quickly with them, get that money out the door with them, show that you're open to bipartisan compromise, and then pass the rest through budget reconciliation. What do you think about the three different approaches?
So the way I sort of would think about it if I were Biden or Chuck Schumer, and I think the way both of them do think about it, and they've been saying this very publicly, is that they want the need in the country, and I think also their political need to improve people's economic fortunes and get the public health crisis under control to determine the process. And so 10 days in, the fact that they're still engaged in bipartisan negotiations that we think are very likely to fail is not necessarily an omen of things to come, that everything is going to get bogged down in bad faith negotiations with Republicans who just want to drag things out and shrink things. That given that Congress passed a $900 billion bill just around Christmas time, and vaccines are just getting distributed out into the states, that there's maybe a little bit of window to try your hand at something, at least make a good faith attempt to get Republican buy-in to these plans. But at some point, that's going to run out, and you need to make sure that not only do you have enough vaccine to get into people's arm, but you have the infrastructure in place to deliver it in a way that isn't completely chaotic or just unpleasant for people to do it, so that it discourages them from getting vaccinated and makes them think that the government under Biden is failing. You don't want to pass too little aid so that the economy doesn't recover quickly, assuming we get the virus under control. One of the provisions in Biden's bill, which I think is great, is it's called automatic stabilizers. It's meant to increase the amount of unemployment insurance that flows out to people automatically when the economy is in tough shape, and then to scale that back down only when the economy is healthy, so that Biden doesn't have to keep going back to Congress to get more bills passed, to get more aid out to people. I think if you add that all up, it shows that they understand that what the country needs is really what's going to ultimately drive the strategy that they adopt. The White House came out today. I guess we're recording this on Thursday, so it came out Thursday and said that that they're not interested in splitting up his relief bill. And I think that that's good. I think that that's good mostly as a sign that they are saying they are not going to let this get bogged down in Senate process that will cause things to be delayed and to be shrunk in a way that isn't helpful. In theory, if you could do it that way, pass a minimum wage increase or something like that through regular order and then pass some other things through reconciliation, it all ends up the same in the final analysis as long as the provisions are good. But the provisions have to be good and the process can't be used to dilute them.
Well, the White House has to say they only want to do one package, because if they say they're going to do two packages, you immediately lower the amount that you could possibly get out of the Republicans, right? Like if you say we're going to split this in half, all of a sudden you're negotiating with Republicans over half. If you say this is the bill, is there any hope that you get that number up? And then whatever you put through reconciliation, you don't call it the other half of this thing, but it is the other half of this thing. Is there any? I mean, I'm just thinking about how this is actually playing out in terms of a negotiation.
I think that's what they're worried about. What I mean is that if you decide that you're going to agree to pass what Republicans will pass and then pass the rest of reconciliation, and it adds up to a good package, okay, that's fine. But I think that they have made the correct analysis that that's not likely to be how it plays out if they go down that route.
And then what do you think? So this is maybe too in the weeds, but I'm interested in it. So minimum wage. So the way budget reconciliation works, and this is what what the filibuster can't stop. It is a process that allows budget-related laws to pass with 51 votes in the Senate as opposed to 60. But there are all these other rules. There's amendments that everybody's allowed to put forward. There's limits on what you can do. It has to impact the budget. Do you think that you can get a minimum wage increase through budget reconciliation by calling it an offset for some other spending in the bill? What do you think right now about that?
So I think you could make a good faith argument and back it up that a minimum wage increase meets the weird rules of reconciliation, right? It has to be principally about the budget. Well, if you increase the minimum wage, you both increase tax revenues because people's wages go up, and you reduce spending because people's need for social programs goes down. So you do have like a very direct impact on the federal budget, particularly the parts of the federal budget that are permanent, and that's what reconciliation is meant to deal with. That being said, I think the conventional wisdom for a long time has been that since it's really a regulation and it's not itself a tax increase or a reduction or increase in spending, that it isn't really a budget change. It's not something that you change in the budget line. It's a rule that you impose on businesses.
Yeah.
That the parliamentarian of the Senate, who is the person who kind of makes the final call, might not agree with the argument.
And we can't bribe that person. We can't send that person votes and stuff.
You can fire that person. You can fire that person. You could overrule that person. I think the dirty little secret of reconciliation is that if Democrats wanted to use it as a full end run around the filibuster, they could. But in practice, both Democrats and Republicans have kind of treated reconciliation as like, okay, we get one shot to avoid the filibuster, but we're gonna stick to the
respect it. We're gonna respect it.
Yeah, to the strict rules. Make sure it's budgetary. It's it doesn't touch Social Security. They haven't in practice really gone too far out of the confines of the rules itself. And so far, I haven't seen any sign that Democrats want to, but I think they could, and I think that they could make pretty good arguments for it.
And in a way that allows them to say they're preserving the filibuster. So actually, that brings us to this topic. Let's talk about what we do about the filibuster. Oh no. Brian, I'm very sorry.
It's me, the filibuster.
Brian, the filibuster has been interrupting us all for this entire episode. Interrupted a game.
I know you're in the middle of a very important conversation, but Brian, what are your thoughts on Bean Dad?
Oh no. Oh no. This is what the filibuster does. It comes in and it tries to slow our progress, make it unable for us to have a conversation.
Was it a teaching moment?
Being
It
dad
was
was
not
the
a
can
teaching
opener guy.
moment. It was not a teaching moment, filibuster. Shame on you, filibuster.
Yeah. Look, you'll never get rid of me. I'm the filibuster. I've been around since forever. I'm like, all those songs on albums that aren't the hit song? That's me.
You're
like,
just
Batman Forever.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to listen to that weird U2 song. People want Kiss
We want
My
Seal.
Rose. They
We
want
want
the
Seal. We want Seal. God damn
Not
it.
me, baby. I want all those other songs.
What are some other things that you like,
All right,
filibuster?
let me see. I'm every company Ryan Reynolds has invested in.
Not surprising.
It's just like, why? Like, what do you need? What do you need?
What do you think about Ian Somerhalder's whiskey?
I mean, it's perfect. It's like, why? Also, Ian Somerhalder in general. He's a filibuster.
He's a filibuster. He's a filibuster.
Hey, do you know I hid under Chuck Schumer's bed for 6 days? Did you know that? I just hid under his bed, and I didn't do anything. I enjoyed him not knowing I was there. That's how twisted I am. I'm like every Joker combined.
Well, listen, all right? This is the last time I'm going to deal with you today, filibuster. Listen, we are going to find a way to get out of the promise Kyrsten Sinema made. All right, Joe Manchin's open and amenable. All right, we're gonna minimize you at the very least. Hey, how about this, filibuster? What if we require the Republicans to actually stand up and talk? None of these cloture motions.
That'll be the day. That'll be the day.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Remarkable.
Anyway, Brian, here's where we were at. Back to the conversation. So I actually did want to talk to you about the filibuster. So, we just had this strange week where basically Mitch McConnell used the filibuster to try to extract a promise that the Democrats wouldn't get rid of the filibuster. And at the beginning of the week, I think a lot of people were saying, oh, Mitch overplayed his hand. And then by the end of the week, Joe Manchin basically promised not to get rid of the filibuster, eliminate. You can parse it. There's some space. But Joe Manchin seems to have at least affirmed that he would like to keep the filibuster in place. Sinema went even further, saying she's not even open to eliminating the filibuster. What do you make of those concessions, and how does that change the filibuster debate in Congress going forward?
So to me, I think two things are important. One is that Mitch McConnell isn't really acting like he got much out of this, right? If he had gotten what he was asking for, which was like essentially like a vote on saying we're not going to eliminate the filibuster this year.
But who gives a shit? That's just as not. That would be a 50.
Well, because
it's the same thing. If a rule that says we
Sort
won't
of.
get rid of the filibuster is just what we have, which is a rule that says we won't get rid of the filibuster unless 51 people say so.
I think if 51 people vote to say they won't get rid of the filibuster, the chance that they're going to renege on the basis of future events is lower than two people saying, I'm not going to kill the filibuster, if I'm not open to changing my mind about it now, right? That's basically all you got. And then Mitch McConnell is out there saying, if you guys kill the filibuster, I'm going to make your lives hell. Which is like, well, if you really thought that you had an ironclad promise that it wasn't going to happen, you wouldn't be out there pretending like it, or acting worried that it might. So I don't think he thinks that this story's over, and I think that that's good. And I think he's right. He's right to worry. The fact that in the face of a threat, which was basically, unless you let me say which pieces of Biden's agenda are good to go or not, I'm not going to let you take over the Senate after you won the election. The fact that the answer to that wasn't immediately like, we are going to nuke the filibuster immediately, it's tough to swallow, because that's basically saying like, I'm going to mount a coup through the legislature and
come on. He said, well, look, he's using what he's got. He knows that Joe Manchin, Sinema, Tester, they don't want to do it on an organizing resolution. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be the ones to kill it. right? But like that's Mitch McConnell basically daring them and knowing that Schumer doesn't have the votes. Schumer would love to kill it on the organized resolution. A lot of Democrats would. They don't have the votes.
The reason I found the fact that they wouldn't do it on this sort of basic question of like Joe Manchin was like going to surrender his chairmanship to Mitch McConnell. So if that wasn't enough to convince Joe Manchin that Republicans aren't going to use the filibuster power in a constructive way, then it's going to take a lot of pressure, I think a lot of time, a lot of like repeated evidence that basic, popular, simple things like the minimum wage increase are going to fail before you might get Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to change their minds. And if and when they do, I think that what you were hinting at earlier is correct, that you're not going to see them get rid of the filibuster altogether, but they'll establish a narrow a precedent in the Senate to either lower the number of votes it takes to end debate, or to make if somebody's going to say, I don't want to vote up or down on this, they have to hold the floor, and as soon as they stop holding the floor, then you get to your final vote. Something in that neighborhood. But what I took away from the last week's, shenanigans is that it's gonna be a slow burn, and I think Chuck Schumer would be wise to set up a whole lot of votes for Republicans to filibuster, so that Manchin and Sinema feel like, okay, like he's right. They're not using the filibuster to constructive ends. They're just trying to stop us from doing anything. We got to do something about it.
Right. I mean, it seems like, look, Manchin is not up for 4 more years. Sinema is not up for 4 years. She's in a state that's turning more and more blue. They gotta want to do it. They have to want to. They have to actually think it's the right thing to do. I don't know what pressure. I mean, it has to be a mix of pressure, but it does seem like, especially with Manchin, that he's like a panda you got to coax out.
Yeah, I think Biden would have to get involved, and I think at some level it hasn't dawned on everybody in the Senate, even people who are more amenable to abolishing the filibuster because they just want to legislate, that refusing to abolish the filibuster while maintaining membership in the one party that is like the last bastion of hope for American democracy is a position that is incongruous, right? And it's going to end poorly at some point. I don't know if it'll be in 2022 or 2024 or after that. But if the people who do the work to turn out the vote, their votes count, they win the election, nothing changes. Meanwhile, the other party in state legislatures is out there making it harder to vote, and just responding to their defeats by trying to sort of win by cheating. Eventually, that's going to unravel itself. And Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, maybe an appeal to their own sense that they will have a harder time winning elections if they don't do what it takes to make voting fair, and you can't do that without getting rid of the filibuster. I mean, if all they're thinking about in terms of making this calculation is what effect it's going to have on their reelectability several years down the line, that seems like a pretty straightforward way to make the case to them. Like this, there's the principle of, the majority gets to govern, and there's also the do you want your voters to be able to cast ballots for you easily? And maybe somewhere in there they'll get a sense of more is on the line than just whether there'll be blowback in Arizona because of ads Mitch McConnell runs or whatever.
Yeah, it does seem too we have to make a policy argument about basically a system where there is no cause and effect between vote and outcome is one that has rewarded cynicism. It's rewarded a sense that nothing matters. It has rewarded the kind of politics that led to somebody like Trump. At some point, if Republicans gain full control and there's no filibuster, there's more damage that they can do. But let's bet on our program. Let's not bet on a quarter of our program. Let's not bet on a third of our program. Let's bet on our program, our ability to use our program to win.
So I think it's the substance. If you abolish the filibuster, what are you going to pass? What are the details of those bills? That's important, and those, they should be good laws, and they should help people, and that will, I think, feed the cause of helping Democrats continue to win elections, so that this authoritarian party doesn't get rewarded with more power. But I think that the question of like whether they govern at all is going to matter almost as much. The people who put in all the work over the last 4 years, including the people who listen to this show and are supporters of crooked media, if they come to see that all that work cannot be transmitted into the ability for decent people to govern, then what is their incentive to get involved in the next election and the election after that? And that's really ultimately what I worry about. Less is every program that they pass going to be super popular, implemented well, thus redound to their political benefit in 2, 4, 6, or 8 years? And just do people get the sense that when they vote for the party that they support, that the party that they support will get to, get
to govern?
Yeah, to get their fingers in it,
Yeah. Brian Beutler, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for being here. So sorry about Filibuster. That was really an appropriate interruption. Everybody check out Rubicon Season 2. It's awesome. It's a great way into some of these conversations and the intra-left debates that are defining how Democrats fight moving forward. He talked to Faz Shakir, who was Bernie's campaign manager and who worked on the Hill. The new episode has Chris Hayes. They're both worth listening to. Check it out.
Thanks, John.
Shoot.